Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well. I'm great. I made some changes to my studio. Don't know if you can see it. Maybe I'll do a dedicated new studio tour or something like that. But this is something that I've been wanting to do for quite a while. And it took quite some effort to get all those books in those shelves. But I think it looks awesome because I'm a nerd, right? So in this video, I want to talk about the future of guitar gear or guitar amplification, if you will. Where is it all heading and how will what we have now evolve, or what will it evolve into? And this is something that's on my mind sometimes because, you know, I work with guitar gear. It's what I do. I look into the past, but I also look into the future. So I thought we'd talk about this today. And not just me, because I also asked you guys for your opinions, which we'll get to in a minute as well. Now, the future of guitar gear excites me because obviously I love guitar gear. I live for guitar gear. But there's also something a bit scary about it from my point of view and from my opinion. And what scares me, to be honest, is that some people nowadays don't see the significance anymore of analog tube amplifiers. And I love analog tube amplifiers, obviously. I have a huge rack behind me with a lot of amps. I love them so much, and I think it would be a shame if they were to go away, which some people are saying, you know, tube amps are dying. Just go digital, face the future. And I don't like that. I love tube amps and I love the industry that makes tube amps. So if your opinion is that tube amps are a thing of the past, I'm just not really aligned with that opinion, if you know what I mean. Now, don't get me wrong. I also love digital. You know, I use modelers every day. I use tube amps every day. But we'll get into all of that. Now, I do have a soft spot for analog guitar gear, tube amps. Duh. I even made a documentary a couple of years ago about the magic of tube amps. I might want to do a second part, by the way. If you're interested in seeing that, definitely let me know. So yeah, again, I love tube amplifiers. They are just so awesome. I think they look cool. I think it's fun to use them with the knobs. It's intuitive. The fact that there's a smell and there's heat coming off of the tubes, it's a really physical experience. And it doesn't really get better than tube amps, in my opinion. I mean, that's where all the digital stuff comes from anyway. And when you're working with a proper tube amp, you never have to doubt your tone. Like, is this realistic enough? You know, is this really organic enough? No, because it is the real thing. You know what I mean? And that's why, as I said in another video, I recommend getting at least one tube amplifier to everybody out there who plays guitar. Even if you're a huge fan of modelers and stuff, I think it's a great idea to get at least one single tube amplifier. But I digress. There's something to be said for the simplicity of working with a tube amplifier rather than having the option paralysis of a modeler where you can choose between like hundreds of different amp models and choose all those different parameters and tweak in-depth parameters and stuff. You know, there's something beautiful about an amplifier with a limited amount of controls and a limited amount of tones in it. And you just get to work with that, maybe put a pedal up front. It's just like a beautiful experience. And it's an easy experience to get great tones out of a great tube amplifier. Now, as I mentioned, of course, I also love modeling platforms. They offer you a wide variety of tones, a huge palette of tones, you know, right at your fingertips. They are fun to use, especially nowadays with the touchscreens and the cool graphics. You get access to all those great effects, so you don't need to add a bunch of pedals necessarily if you want to get some, you know, ambient tones, for example, or various dirt pedals or pitch shifting or modulation. You guys know what I mean. Like the whole signal flow is inside one single unit with all the big multi-effects units. I like the capture or profiling stuff. It's a lot of fun to be able to capture my own tube amplifiers and put them into the digital world for using within my DAW. I think that's all great. And let's face it, all of that technology is becoming more and more accurate, right? All of the profiling or capturing techs are becoming more accurate each day, which is cool. I like to see that. But let's face it, they need to have tube amplifiers in order to exist because everything in the digital world is based, or at least partially based, on real physical amplifiers, and not the amplifiers by themselves, but also, of course, the speakers and the microphones, etc. So the digital world heavily relies on the analog world. So if the analog world wasn't there anymore, there wouldn't really be a great digital world because it draws from all that analog stuff. Even the amp models that were created digitally, they are based off, existing amplifier designs and maybe tweaked a little bit in order to make them sound different. Like the Line 6 Badonk, for example, which is a great amp model, but it was based on a couple of different analog amplifiers. So if your thoughts are that, the tube amp world is obsolete now and you just accept that everything is digital, what are they going to base future digital amp models on, right? If there are no tube amps anymore, what are you going to base those models on? Are you going to create stuff from scratch that doesn't sound like an analog tube amplifier? I mean, what's so great about that? I mean, the sound that we all love and that we all know so well stems from that analog tube world for the most part, with, of course, solid state amps aside and stuff like that. But most of the classic tones that we all know and love are tube amp tones, and that's what the digital world aims to replicate. Now, how will tube amplifiers evolve in the future? That's an interesting question. I think that they might, on the one hand, become more simple again. Like orange amps, for example, they tend to be quite simple and basic, not too many controls, just really reliable and easy to fix, I guess, for the analog amp techs and stuff. Whereas other amplifiers are becoming more modern with digital technology, with IR loaders, reactive loads, digital reverb, digital effects, and all that stuff built in, which is great. But there's something to be said for a simple analog design in terms of reliability in the long term. So I do like that a lot of amp brands are becoming more modern and embracing those modern technologies, but at the same time, it might make them harder to service and repair in the future. So that's something to be cautious of, I think. And at the same time, how will modelers evolve? Great question. I guess that capture tech will become more accurate. We're already very close with platforms like Tonex, but some other platforms need a little bit more work. And of course, the workflow can be a little bit better. And I have some thoughts about where amp modeling might go in terms of AI in the future. So right now you have to capture your amplifier, right? But I can imagine something where you just basically talk to your computer and say, I want a guitar tone that sounds like a Diesel VH4 with a V30 loaded 4x12, let's say similar to a Mesa Boogie cabinet, mic'd with an SM57 and a touch of room reverb. And then you play through it, or it generates a tone, you play through it, and then you're like, I'd like to have a little bit more treble. You know what? Give me access to a tone stack, standard Diesel tone stack. Oh, maybe give me a rectifier tone stack and let me tweak the treble. Oh, okay, yeah, let's do a little bit more bottom end thump. And then you just talk to your AI and it sculpts the tone for you. That's kind of where I see that going. Maybe I'm totally off, but that's just how I imagine like the future in terms of digital guitar tones. But again, it will have to have a database of stuff to draw from and to create all those tones from. And that, of course, will be the analog world. So let's not forget the analog world and our lovely tube amplifiers. That's just a message that I always try to convey on this channel. Anyway, enough from me. I asked you guys your opinions on what you think the future will be. And let's start with comments on my channel, because I did a post on my channel. And let's read some of these comments. So I'm not going to read all your names because I suck at reading your names. So I'm just going to start at the top here. AI stem splitting and tone modeling per track. Maybe even vocal modeling so you can sing with someone else's voice. Where is the fun in that, to be honest? I mean, isn't it cool to have singers that have their own identities and, you know, that can make a living with singing if they are great? But maybe you're right, where you can make a song and sound like the actual band. I'm not looking forward to this, but I can see it becoming a big thing. Yeah, it's dangerous, I think, AI in that regard. Modelers will include DAWs or DAWs. Interesting. I don't know what I think of that, if that's a great thing or not, but maybe you're right. That could be true. Album-ready guitar tones are available for everyone, even for free. Bring back good songwriting. Well, it just depends on what makes you happy, right? And what you like to focus on. I like gear. I also like writing songs and writing music, but I think there's nothing wrong with just enjoying something like guitar gear. What's wrong with that? It's better than, you know, being a drug addict or something, or an alcoholic. Let's see what this guy says. Personally, I'm decades behind when it comes to gear. I use the old stuff with the exception of new boutique pedals, amps. I have the first generation Blackstar HD100 and a 1992 using Kettner Vortex. Majority of my guitars are from the 90s and 2010s, and I love every piece. Analog is and will be viable, especially with the price of digital and the components to use and make digital modelers is getting out of hand. The used market is going to see a boom with these. In the flip side, buyers are going to see huge price increases on the used stuff. Okay, interesting take. Kids in a garage or basement need something to plug into. XFX and Neural and all that is cool, but a pawn shop carve-in makes noise. I don't think that analog amps will ever go away. I hope you're right. I hope they never go away. The existence of captures proves that analog has a place and likely will forever. Even the most advanced plugins emulating analog studio gear of all types has not completely replaced the physical version, although many are viable substitutes at this price point. Yeah, substitutes, alternatives, let's put it like that, because, you know, it's not really a substitute, I think. But they can live side by side. Of course, I agree with that. I don't see much of a change. As a kid in the 90s, I was using a Digitech RP300 with a crate. So modelers and amps have been a thing for a while, yet the tech has improved, but still pretty much the same of tube amps and digital modelers, how they're living together. Only thing that I personally like to see is solid state power amp sections improved to the point you can distinguish in between tube amp power section. This way, when you hook up a modeler to a digital power amp, it feels and sounds even more closer to the actual amp, which could save some of us some serious cash, instead of spending it on the next insert big name amp brand purchase. I mean, if you don't see much of a change, I don't mind that answer, to be honest. I think it's great if they can keep coexisting in peace, you know what I mean? All right, let's read this next comment here. In the computer enthusiast gaming world, everything sucks because all the powerful chips and RAM are locked to AI data centers for years to come. It is about to bleed into everything, TVs, phones, etc. Higher cost, lower performance, longer wait times. I would be surprised if digital guitar equipment is somehow spared this. Processors in the Quad Cortex, XFX, Helix, etc. are all years old by the time these modelers come out. I fear we won't see a generational leap of compute in digital gear for another 10 to 15 years. So yes, I think analog gear will remain relevant. It has to, if the musical instrument industry is to survive the coming apocalypse. Ooh, wow. All right. Interesting point. Next one. The most sought after gear is 50 plus years old, while digital gear will always be obsolete in less than 10 years. All analog will go nowhere. That's kind of also what my point was with simple analog, fully analog designs. As long as you can get those same components that the amp was made of, you know, you can still, you know, replace components and stuff like that. I think a lot of people will be so jaded by modeling gear, both due to them further implementing AI and due to increasing chip costs, that analog solid state amps will enter a golden age. Interesting. Cool. I like it. Modelers will move towards AI-generated tones and tone cloning. Analog gear will always remain relevant, but will be used less and less in live settings. Amps will integrate even more with digital stuff. You'll have your compact, lightweight tube head that will do most of or even all the job. Anyway, some big bands will always have full stacks because yes, they look great and they sound fantastic. And then this person says the guitar itself will be the entire rig, amps, effects, guitars, pickups, etc. It will be the Variax done right. Cool, could be fun, could be fun. Now let's go to Facebook and check out comments on my Sonic Drive Studio page. There are a lot of long comments here. You can go to my Facebook page and check them out. So I'm not going to read the full comments. The video will become too long. So I'll do some excerpts. So Davor here has an interesting point. Manufacturers and consumers will continue the eternal pursuit for the perfect tone. New artists will set new standards and possibly inspire development of new gear. Maybe in pedal forms. We'll probably see more reissues of classic amps we all love. Analog gear will still be relevant. As a matter of fact, I think it's having a comeback. From what I've seen on concerts in my country, more and more famous guitar players are switching back to analog from digital. That is true. I remember an interview with Moby over 25 years ago. The journalist asked him if he thinks guitar music is dead. He replied, "As long as it makes a small man feel powerful, guitar will never die." 25 years later, guitar music is still alive and well. Following Moby's statement, I think, as long as there are people who like that wall of sound behind them in a rehearsal room, analog gear will still be relevant. I love digital. I use plugins every day. They make life easier, but they don't make me feel powerful. Amps do. Great statement. Thank you. Next comment. I think, like studio gear, we will see things swing back around to a hybrid workflow, enhancing analog to better integrate with digital or vice versa. The whole digital chasing accuracy is tired. Finding gear that is created to have the best of each from the get-go, instead of piecing things together, is the future. Okay, fair point. I like that. I like that. Again, both worlds living in harmony together. A couple more interesting comments here. Nathan says, it would be exciting if digital could nail the sound of analog gear, but I haven't been convinced that we are there or if it's possible. IRs do a great job of capturing the entire essence of a physical amp, but for me, its accuracy isn't representative of how it sounds playing through a cabinet or speaker, which for whatever reason sounds pleasant to me. So he's talking about like the non-linear qualities of analog gear and like the unpredictability of it. Especially playing in a room through a real cabinet is something that you will never be able to replicate in a digital environment. Of course, I agree with that. Eric says digital will always continue to push forward. The next big hurdle in digital and lightweight tiny physical power amps is really nailing the big tube power amp response and balls. Okay, I hear you. You know, the headroom, the oomph, and the power. Sure. Carl says, I suspect analog and digital will continue to coexist, if only because certain things like analog fuzz pedals just have a certain appeal and aren't terribly complicated to make. That's a fair point as well. But I think analog guitar gear will mostly find a home in the studio, while digital gear will dominate in live situations. Okay, fair enough. And then Sammy says more hybrid digital tube amps, as I talked about, and AI modeling. Cool. Okay, let's check out a couple more comments. This is on my personal Facebook page. Jim says, I think the future has a place for both. Yes, I agree. Again, I'm not going to read all the comments because it's just too much. My buddy John Brown says, hopefully with all this amazing tech, we'll actually see guitar players playing it. Fair point. I like that comment. Rather than, you know, AI creating music, which I think is not cool. Isaac, analog gear will always have a place. Before you can digitize, you need to experiment, and that is analog. Justin, digital profilers with a built-in tube power amp would be the complete package. I kind of agree, but I think that preamps also sound better when they have some tubes in there, in general. And then Fabian says, I would love to have tones stored inside a guitar by more companies. You know, like having a guitar where you have like a modeler and everything inside the guitar itself. I mean, it's a fun concept. I've tried some guitars from Enya that do that, but it's not, I don't know about it. I don't know. I mean, it's fun for practice and stuff, but like for the whole thing, I don't know. I don't know. And of course, Colin Scott says, I envision even more Tube Screamer and Klon variants. And then Henning, of course, says, because it's what we truly need, duh. Yes, well, obviously that's going to happen. We all know that. Jason says that digital is going to be indistinguishable from analog gear. It's really close already with the neural modeling, but there will always be something special about the real thing that feels better to a player at gut level. And I do agree with that. Personally, I really like companies that do the best of both worlds. Yes, you know, again, living in harmony together, which is how I'd like to see it. Drew says digital will go through the motions, but rest assured, people are still going to be paying out of the nose, for Plexis, Dual Rex, and Marks. Good point. And then Dave says, I think we are at the beginning of an analog gear popularity cycle. I've listened to a lot of podcasts from current popular artists in the metal genre that are all going back to miking amps and recording live drums. Yeah, that is true, because a lot of music is sounding the same these days because they're all using the same, modelers and the same IRs and the same program drums and stuff. So I think that that is true, that a lot of bands are going back to the analog thing because they find themselves enjoying that more, getting better results with that. And then Greg says, analog gear will still be used. Digital is an homage to the analog gear. True, true. Digital will continue to grow in popularity because of its portability, flexibility, convenience, consistency, etc. Yeah, so it's fine for me if digital, becomes more popular, as long as we don't forget about the analog world. And then there are a couple more comments as well on the Rock and Metal Amps, Pedals and Gear Facebook group. If you're not a member yet, go there to check out this post to discuss this topic. But yeah, that was interesting. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below, what are your thoughts on the future of guitar amplification gear? I'd love to know. Also be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as that helps out the algorithm. I'd really appreciate it. And if you want to support this channel, you can get something in my affiliate links, like a beautiful tube amplifier or a pedal or whatever, or a modeler at Tolman and Sweetwater, or get something in my web store like a capture pack or an IR pack. That really helps out the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next Ranty Rant discussion video. I really enjoy these, so I'm looking forward to it. Cheers, guys.